Crucifixion was one of the most infamous methods of execution in history, most strongly associated with ancient Rome, but it was used by earlier civilizations as well, including the Persians and Carthaginians. Unlike other forms of execution designed to kill quickly, crucifixion was deliberately prolonged and agonizing, designed to serve as both punishment and a public warning. The process began with the prisoner being stripped of their clothing, often scourged beforehand with whips embedded with metal or bone fragments. This initial scourging alone could cause severe lacerations, blood loss, and intense pain. Once weakened and partially immobilized, the victim was forced to carry the horizontal beam of the cross, a weight often exceeding 100 pounds, to the site of execution. This journey was both physically brutal and psychologically tormenting, as it was conducted publicly, sometimes through crowded streets, to amplify humiliation. At the site, the victim would be either tied or nailed to the wooden structure. Nails, typically driven through the wrists rather than the palms to support body weight, caused excruciating pain and damage to nerves and bones. If the feet were nailed, it added another layer of agony. Hanging from the cross forced the body into unnatural positions, making breathing increasingly difficult. Victims were left to hang for hours or even days, slowly suffocating as fatigue and the body's own weight made inhalation a laborious effort. Dehydration, shock, and exposure to the elements compounded the suffering. Crucifixion was not only about death, it was about spectacle. The slow, drawn-out torment served as a deterrent, reinforcing the power of the state and its ability to punish transgressors with the utmost cruelty. Even in earlier civilizations, variations of crucifixion were used, showing a chilling continuity in the human capacity for methodical and symbolic suffering. By the time of the Roman Empire, it had evolved into a calculated form of psychological, physical, and social punishment, leaving victims to endure a level of pain that has rarely been matched in human history. The rack was one of the most feared instruments of torture in medieval Europe, designed not to kill, but to extract confessions through extreme physical agony. It was essentially a large wooden frame with rollers at either end, to which a victim's wrists and ankles were securely tied. Once restrained, the torturer would slowly turn the rollers, stretching the prisoner's body to its breaking point. The mechanics of the device were horrifyingly effective. As the ropes or chains pulled the limbs in opposite directions, muscles, tendons, and joints were forcibly stretched beyond their natural limits. Fingers, shoulders, and knees could dislocate with sickening cracks. The pain was not just immediate, it radiated through the body, often causing long-term nerve damage or permanent disability. The victim might remain conscious throughout, aware of each agonizing snap and tear, which was precisely the purpose: terror and compliance. Though commonly associated with the Inquisition, the rack was also used in England, France, and other European countries for centuries. Judges and inquisitors believed that no accused criminal could endure such pain without revealing the truth, and thus the rack became a staple of legal torture. It was especially favored for crimes considered heinous, including treason, heresy, and murder. Victims were sometimes left on the device for hours, with intermittent release to prolong suffering or to manipulate their willingness to confess. The psychological aspect was as cruel as the physical. Knowing that every turn of the rollers would bring unbearable agony kept prisoners in a state of terror. Many confessions obtained under the rack were later recanted, but that rarely mitigated the punishment already endured. The rack stands as a chilling example of how technology and human cruelty combined in history to inflict maximum suffering for control and intimidation, demonstrating that torture was rarely just about immediate death. It was about fear, obedience, and spectacle. The Iron Maiden is one of the most infamous torture devices in history, often remembered for its terrifying design and symbolic cruelty. Contrary to some popular myths, it emerged in Renaissance Germany around the 18th century, though its exact historical usage is debated. The device was a human-sized iron cabinet lined with spikes on the interior. A victim would be placed inside, and the doors would be slowly closed, impaling them without immediately causing death. The genius of its design was in the precision of suffering. The spikes were strategically placed to avoid vital organs at first, so the victim would experience intense pain as the metal pierced their flesh, while remaining alive long enough for extended torment. As the doors closed further, deeper penetration would occur, intensifying agony. The slow compression ensured the victim endured maximum physical pain, while also experiencing terror from being trapped inside a confined, unyielding structure. Historical records suggest that the Iron Maiden was less about mass execution and more about spectacle and intimidation. It served served as a warning to those who might defy authority, demonstrating the reach of power and the severity of punishment. In some cases, it was used to extract confessions, though more often it functioned as a symbolic instrument of terror, leaving witnesses with a visceral sense of fear. What makes the Iron Maiden especially chilling is its combination of ingenuity and sadism. It wasn't merely about killing, it was about designing suffering with precision, forcing the mind and body to experience excruciating pain while trapped in complete helplessness. While later historians have questioned how widespread its use truly was, the Iron Maiden remains an enduring symbol of calculated cruelty, representing a point in history when punishment and psychological torment were fused into a single, horrifying method. Chinese water torture is one of the more psychologically devastating methods in history, relying less on immediate physical injury and more on prolonged mental torment. Originating in ancient China and later adapted in Europe, this method involved restraining a victim and dripping water continuously onto a single spot on their forehead. At first, the sensation might seem innocuous, but over time it became maddening. The constant dripping created a feeling of helplessness and anticipation that slowly eroded the victim's mental stability. Victims often experienced severe anxiety, insomnia, and panic as the mind became obsessed with the repetitive, unpredictable rhythm of each drop. The torture could last hours or even days, pushing the prisoner to the edge of sanity without leaving visible marks. This subtlety made it particularly cruel, because the torment was entirely psychological, yet utterly relentless. Although it is called Chinese water torture, variations of the method were documented in medieval Europe as well, particularly in inquisitorial practices. The slow, almost hypnotic nature of the dripping exploited human psychological vulnerabilities, forcing confessions or compliance not through sheer pain, but through mental breakdown. Victims often became disoriented, unable to sleep, and emotionally unstable, demonstrating how a seemingly simple technique could devastate the human mind. What makes this method uniquely sinister is that it transforms time itself into a weapon. The mind begins to anticipate each drop, amplifying fear and dread with every passing minute. Unlike devices designed to immediately incapacitate or kill, Chinese water torture relied on patience, cruelty, and the calculated exploitation of human psychology. In history, it stands as a reminder that torture doesn't always need blood or broken bones. Sometimes the mind alone is enough to inflict unbearable suffering. Scaphism is one of the most horrifying and gruesome execution methods recorded in history, infamous for combining physical agony, exposure, and prolonged psychological torment. It originated in ancient Persia and was designed not just to kill, but to maximize suffering over days. The method involved placing the victim between two narrow boats or hollowed-out tree trunks, with their head, hands, and feet exposed. Once restrained, the victim was force-fed a mixture of milk and honey, which both nourished and fattened them while also attracting insects. The torment didn't stop there. The exposed skin and sticky substances became a feast for swarms of insects, which would bite, sting, and lay eggs in the wounds. Victims suffered extreme pain from infections, open sores, and constant irritation from the relentless insects. Exposure to the sun during the day and cold at night compounded the physical misery, while the inability to move prevented any relief or defense against the torment. Death from scaphism was slow and excruciating. Victims often lingered for days, succumbing to a combination of dehydration, starvation, septic shock, and exhaustion. The method was intended as the ultimate punishment, ensuring that both the body and mind were subjected to prolonged, inescapable suffering. Unlike more immediate methods like crucifixion or the brazen bull, scaphism was about endurance, prolonging agony to its absolute limits while leaving the victim conscious and aware of every moment. Historically, scaphism exemplifies the extreme cruelty that certain regimes or rulers employed to maintain power and instill fear. It wasn't simply execution, it was spectacle, intimidation, and psychological terror rolled into one unthinkably cruel procedure. The sheer deliberateness of its design underscores the dark ingenuity humans have sometimes applied to the art of suffering, marking scaphism as one of the most shocking and merciless punishments in recorded history. The Judas cradle is one of the more infamous devices from the Spanish Inquisition, designed to inflict excruciating pain through slow, deliberate physical torment. Unlike methods intended to cause immediate death, the Judas cradle was built to prolong suffering while simultaneously humiliating the victim. The device consisted of a pyramid-shaped wooden or metal seat upon which the victim was forced to sit. Their body weight would gradually press them down onto the pointed apex, targeting the most sensitive areas of the body. The process of torture was deliberately slow slow. Victims were often suspended above the seat and gradually lowered, or forced to sit while weights were applied to increase pressure. The sharp point would penetrate the body painfully, and any movement could worsen the injury. Over time, the flesh could tear, muscles strain, and bones shift, causing a combination of sharp, stabbing pain and deep, lingering soreness. The device ensured that every movement of the prisoner exacerbated the agony, creating a sense of helplessness and constant suffering. Psychologically, the Judas cradle was as cruel as it was physically brutal. Victims were fully aware that any attempt to shift or escape would intensify the pain, creating a state of terror and anticipation. It was also a highly visible method of punishment, intended to humiliate the condemned and serve as a warning to others. In many cases, the torture could continue for hours or even days, depending on the will of the torturers and the severity of the crime. The Judas cradle exemplifies the medieval obsession with combining physical and psychological punishment. It wasn't merely about ending life. It was about asserting control, instilling fear, and ensuring that the victim endured maximum suffering while powerless to resist. The meticulous design and slow execution made it one of the most dreaded devices of its time, highlighting how calculated cruelty can be engineered into simple yet profoundly painful mechanisms. The breaking wheel, also known as the Catherine wheel, was a method of execution used in medieval Europe that combined public spectacle with prolonged, excruciating physical suffering. This device consisted of a large wooden wheel, often mounted horizontally or vertically, on which the victim's limbs were broken and arranged. The process was deliberate, methodical, and designed to maximize pain while turning the execution into a visible warning for others. Execution typically began with the victim being tied to the wheel. Using heavy iron rods or hammers, the torturers would systematically crush or dislocate the limbs, often starting with the arms and then moving to the legs. The severity and number of blows varied according to the perceived severity of the crime. In some cases, victims were left alive for hours or even days, while their shattered bodies were woven into the wheel, exposing them to public humiliation and prolonged agony. The wheel's design allowed the victim to remain immobilized while every part of their body suffered immense trauma, ensuring maximum endurance of pain. Death was often not immediate. Victims could linger for hours, suffering from shock, blood loss, and exposure to the elements. Sometimes the condemned were left on display after death, with their broken bodies tied to the wheel, serving as a stark and terrifying reminder of the consequences of defiance or crime. The method combined both physical torment and psychological terror. The anticipation of each subsequent blow added a layer of mental suffering that was just as potent as the injuries themselves. The breaking wheel represents the grim ingenuity of medieval punishment. It wasn't simply about executing a criminal. It was about control, spectacle, and teaching a lesson to society. The slow, methodical infliction of pain, combined with the public nature of the execution, made it one of the most dreaded methods in European history, a testament to the extreme lengths humans have gone to impose authority and instill fear. The brazen bull is one of the most horrifying methods of execution from ancient history, combining ingenuity, cruelty, and psychological terror. It was invented in 5th century BCE Greece by Perillus of Athens, and reportedly used by tyrants to punish criminals and enemies. The device was a hollow, life-size bronze bull with a door that could be closed once the victim was inside. Beneath the bull, a fire would be lit, gradually roasting the person alive. What made the brazen bull uniquely cruel was not just the physical torment of burning, but the design of the acoustics. The interior was fitted with a system of tubes so that the screams of the victim were transformed into sounds resembling the bellowing of a bull. This horrifying feature served a dual purpose. It heightened the victim's terror as they realized their agony would become part of the spectacle, and it terrorized those witnessing the execution, amplifying the psychological impact of the punishment. The victim endured excruciating heat as the bronze absorbed the fire's energy, gradually burning flesh and causing internal damage long before death. The slow nature of the execution ensured maximum suffering, forcing the condemned to experience every agonizing moment fully conscious. Unlike other methods that targeted a single type of pain, the brazen bull inflicted a combination of heat, suffocation, and mental terror, making it a uniquely comprehensive instrument of torment. Historically, the brazen bull reflects the extremes of human ingenuity applied to cruelty. It was not merely a tool for execution, but a carefully crafted symbol of power designed to inspire fear and awe. Its calculated method of prolonging pain while creating a public spectacle underscores a pattern seen across history. Torture and execution were often as much about demonstrating authority as they were about punishment. The Brazen Bull remains one of the most infamous examples of how creativity and cruelty were combined in the service of terror.